Have you ever wondered if an avoidant is actually discarding you instead of just needing space? If you're seeing certain behaviors that feel different from their usual patterns, there are 5 clear signs that they're not just pulling back. They're actively removing you from their life. Today we're going to walk you through these 5 warning signs in the exact order they usually happen. Because here's the thing, when avoidants start this process, most people miss the early signs and only realize what's happening when it's already too late. But first, here's an important question. How many times have you made excuses for someone's behavior, telling yourself they're just busy or going through a rough patch, only to realize later that they were actually checking out of the relationship? If this sounds familiar, pay close attention to what you're about to learn. Now, before we dive into the 5 signs, it's important to understand how avoidants behave when they're done with someone. Unlike other attachment styles that might have dramatic breakups or clear conversations about ending things, avoidants prefer to gradually reduce their investment in you until you're basically strangers, all while never officially ending anything. This process isn't random. The key is recognizing that this isn't about their typical need for space or their usual hot and cold behavior. This is different. This is them systematically detaching from you emotionally and practically. The reason this is so confusing is that avoidants don't usually announce their intentions. They don't sit you down and say, "I'm done with this relationship." Instead, they slowly withdraw their energy, attention, and investment until the relationship dies from neglect. It's like watching a plant slowly wilt because someone stopped watering it, except the person pretends they're still taking care of it. Understanding this process is crucial because it affects how you respond. When you think someone is just going through a rough patch, you might increase your efforts to support them. But when someone is actively discarding you, those same efforts often push them away faster or make you look desperate in their eyes. So let's break down these 5 signs, starting with the earliest warning signal and building up to the most obvious ones. The first thing an avoidant does when they're discarding you is they stop asking questions about your life. Now, this might sound subtle, but it's actually huge. Think about it. When someone cares about you, they naturally want to know what's happening in your world. They ask how your day went, how that important meeting turned out, what happened with that situation you were stressed about. But when an avoidant starts the discard process, these questions just stop. Conversations become purely functional. They might still respond to your texts, but they're not initiating deeper discussions. They're not following up on things you mentioned before. If you tell them about a job interview, they don't ask how it went. If you mention you're dealing with family drama, they don't check in later to see how you're handling it. This happens because asking questions requires emotional investment. When you ask someone about their life, you're essentially saying, "Your experiences matter to me, and I want to be part of your world." But an avoidant who's discarding you is doing the exact opposite. They're trying to reduce their emotional investment in your life. The tricky part is that this change often happens gradually. Maybe they used to ask 5 questions about your day, then it drops to 3, then 1, then none. You might not notice at first because you're still getting some interaction, but if you pay attention to the quality and depth of your conversations, you'll see the shift. Another aspect of this is that they stop remembering details about your life. They used to remember that you had a doctor's appointment on Tuesday, or that you were nervous about a presentation. Now they seem genuinely surprised when you mention these things, as if they're hearing about them for the first time. This isn't because they have bad memory, it's because they've stopped paying attention. You might find yourself having to repeat information or re-explain situations because they weren't really listening the first time. This is drastically different from their usual behavior, where they might be quiet, but were still absorbing what you shared. What's particularly telling about this first sign is how it affects your daily interactions. You'll start to notice that conversations feel one-sided. You're sharing details about your life, your thoughts, your experiences, but they're not reciprocating with the same level of interest or engagement. It's like talking to someone who's physically present, but mentally somewhere else entirely. This lack of curiosity about your life creates a sense of isolation, even when you're together. You might find yourself feeling like you're bothering them when you share something important, or like your experiences don't matter to them anymore. This feeling is usually accurate. They are becoming less interested in your world because they're preparing to exit it. The second sign that an avoidant is discarding you is that they start cancelling or avoiding making any future plans. This one is particularly painful because it directly attacks your sense of security and connection with them. When someone cares about maintaining a relationship with you, they naturally think about future experiences you could share together. They might suggest trying that new restaurant next week, or mention a movie they want to see with you, or talk about plans for the weekend. These future-oriented conversations show that you have a place in their tomorrow. But an avoidant who's discarding you will systematically avoid making any commitments about the future. When you suggest doing something together next weekend, you'll get responses like, "Let me see how I feel," "I might be busy," or "We'll figure it out later." These aren't definitive no's, but they're not yeses either. They're ways of avoiding commitment without having to reject you directly. Even worse, they might agree to plans and then cancel them at the last minute. They'll have perfectly reasonable excuses. Work came up, they're not feeling well, something unexpected happened with family, and maybe some of these excuses are even true. But when it becomes a pattern, when they're consistently choosing other priorities over spending time with you, that's a clear message. This behavior serves multiple purposes for the avoidant. First, it prevents them from having to spend quality time with you, which would require emotional presence and connection. Second, it sends you a message about where you rank in their priorities without them having to say it directly. Third, it creates distance and uncertainty, which makes it easier for them to gradually exit the relationship. You'll notice that they become particularly vague about anything that's more than a few days away. If you try to plan something for next month, they act like you're asking them to commit to something impossibly far in the future. This is because in their mind, they're not sure you'll still be in their life next month. What makes this especially frustrating is that they might make plans with other people during the same time periods when they claim to be too busy or uncertain to make plans with you. You might see on social media that they went out with friends on a night when they said they were too tired to see you, or that they committed to a work event weeks in advance while telling you they can't plan that far ahead. This selective availability is a clear indicator of where their priorities lie and how much emotional energy they're willing to invest in the relationship with you versus other relationships in their life. The third sign is perhaps the most heartbreaking because it affects the day-to-day quality of your relationship. They become physically present but emotionally absent. When you're together, they're there in body but their mind and heart are somewhere else entirely. Picture this. You're sitting together watching a movie, but they're constantly on their phone. Or you're having dinner, but they seem distracted and disengaged. They might be responding to your comments, but their responses are automatic and surface level. They're going through the motions of being with you without actually being present. This is different from their usual avoidant behavior where they might be quiet or reserved but still engaged. When they're discarding you, it's like they've put up an invisible wall. They stop making eye contact during conversations. They don't react to your jokes the way they used to. Physical affection becomes rare and feels obligatory when it happens. You might notice they stop touching you casually. No more hand-holding while walking, no more spontaneous hugs, no more gentle touches while you're talking. Physical intimacy, if it happens at all, feels disconnected and mechanical. It's like they're going through the motions because they think they should, not because they want to. The emotional absence is even more telling. They stop sharing their thoughts and feelings with you. Conversations become purely informational, logistics about schedules, surface-level observations, responses to direct questions. But the deeper sharing, the vulnerable moments, the emotional intimacy, all of that disappears. This creates a particularly cruel situation because you're physically together but emotionally alone. You might find yourself feeling lonelier when you're with them than when you're by yourself. That's because their presence without genuine engagement is actually more isolating than their absence would be. During this phase, you might also notice that they seem more animated and engaged when interacting with other people. They might laugh and joke with friends in ways they no longer do with you, or show enthusiasm for conversations with co-workers while seeming bored during your interactions. This contrast makes it clear that their emotional withdrawal is specific to you, not a general mood or temporary state. The fourth sign represents a major escalation in the discard process. You become the last priority in their life, and they make this abundantly clear through their actions. Everything and everyone else comes before you. Work, friends, family, hobbies, even random social media scrolling. This isn't about them being busy or having a demanding period at work. This is about them consistently choosing literally anything over spending quality time with you. They'll work late every night for weeks, but never suggest you grab dinner together. They'll make time for friends they haven't seen in months, but be too tired to have a meaningful conversation with you. You'll start noticing that you only get their attention when it's convenient for them or when they need something. They might text you when they're bored or call when they're driving somewhere and have time to kill. But when it comes to making actual plans or giving you focused attention, there's always something more important. The most painful part of this phase is how obvious they make it. They're not trying to hide the fact that you're not a priority. They'll cancel plans with you to hang out with friends, or choose to work on a Saturday instead of spending time together, or spend hours scrolling social media while barely acknowledging your presence. This behavior serves as a clear message about your value in their life, and it's designed to make you eventually give up and walk away. They're hoping you'll get frustrated enough with being treated as an afterthought that you'll end the relationship yourself, saving them from having to do it directly. What makes this particularly confusing is that they might still say things like, "You're important to me," or "I care about you," but their actions tell a completely different story. Actions always reveal true intentions, and when someone consistently treats you like you don't matter, that's exactly how they feel about you. The fifth and final sign is when they start creating problems and conflicts over things that never bothered them before. This is the most active part of the discard process, where they're not just withdrawing but actually pushing you away. Suddenly, habits you've had for months become annoying to them. The way you laugh, how you organize things, your opinions on topics they used to find interesting, everything becomes a source of irritation. They'll bring up old arguments that you thought were resolved or find fault with things you do that they used to appreciate. This isn't about genuine incompatibility issues that need to be addressed. This is about them manufacturing reasons to justify their growing emotional distance. In their mind, if they can find enough things wrong with you or the relationship, then their desire to leave becomes rational rather than just a result of their avoidant patterns. You might find yourself walking on eggshells, trying not to trigger their irritation, but here's the thing. It doesn't matter how perfectly you behave, because the problem isn't really your behavior. The problem is that they've already decided they want out, and they're looking for justification. They might start making comments like, "We're just too different," or "I don't think we want the same things," or "Maybe we're not as compatible as I thought." These statements come out of nowhere because they're not based on new discoveries about your relationship. They're based on their desire to create distance and eventual exit. This phase often includes them mentioning other people who they think are more compatible with them, or talking about how they need to find themselves or figure out what they really want. They're essentially telling you that you're not the right person for them without directly breaking up with you. Now, you might be wondering why avoidants go through this elaborate process instead of just ending the relationship directly. There are several psychological reasons for this behavior. First, it allows them to avoid the discomfort of a direct confrontation or difficult conversation. Avoidants hate conflict and emotional intensity, so gradually fading away feels safer than having a breakup conversation that might involve tears, arguments, or demands for explanation. Second, it puts the burden of ending the relationship on you. If they can make the relationship unpleasant enough, you'll eventually get fed up and leave, which means they don't have to be the bad guy who ended things. They can tell themselves and others that you gave up on the relationship, not them. Third, it gives them a sense of control over the situation. Instead of having to make a clear decision and communicate it, they can slowly adjust their level of investment based on how they're feeling day by day. This feels less committal and overwhelming than making a definitive choice. Fourth, it allows them to keep their options open. By never officially ending things, they maintain the possibility of coming back later if they change their mind or if their other options don't work out. They're essentially keeping you on standby while they explore other possibilities. Understanding these motivations is important because it helps you realize that this behavior isn't really about you or your worth as a person. It's about their inability to handle relationships in a direct, mature way. You're not being discarded because you're not good enough. You're being discarded because they can't handle the vulnerability and commitment that real relationships require. There's also an element of emotional cowardice in this process. By making you do the hard work of ending the relationship, they get to maintain their self-image as someone who doesn't hurt people. They can tell themselves that they never actually rejected you. You just decided to leave on your own. This allows them to avoid feeling guilty about their actions while still getting the outcome they want. So, what should you do if you're recognizing these signs in your relationship? The most important thing is to stop making excuses for their behavior and start accepting what their actions are telling you. When someone shows you through their consistent behavior that you're not a priority in their life, believe them. Don't wait around hoping they'll realize your value or change their mind. Don't increase your efforts to win back their attention, because that often pushes avoidance away faster. Instead, start focusing on your own well-being and what you deserve in a relationship. You deserve someone who asks about your life because they genuinely care. You deserve someone who makes plans with you because they want to share experiences with you. You deserve someone who is emotionally present when you're together, who makes you a priority, and who addresses relationship issues directly instead of creating artificial conflicts. If you're in the early stages of this process, maybe you're seeing the first 2 or 3 signs, you could try having one honest conversation about what you're observing. But don't make it about changing them or demanding different behavior. Make it about understanding where you stand and what they're able to offer. Say something like, "I've noticed we don't seem to connect the way we used to, and you seem less interested in making plans together. I'm wondering if this relationship is still working for you." This gives them an opportunity to be honest about their feelings without putting them on the defensive. However, be prepared for them to minimize your concerns, make promises they won't keep, or turn the conversation around to make you seem needy or demanding. Avoidants are skilled at avoiding direct conversations about relationship issues, even when you approach them calmly and rationally. If they can't or won't give you clarity about their intentions, or if you're seeing all 5 of these signs, it's time to make your own decision about what you're willing to accept. You don't need their permission to end a relationship that isn't meeting your needs. Remember, you have the power to choose not to participate in this slow discard process. You can decide that you deserve better treatment and remove yourself from the situation before it gets to the final stages where they're actively pushing you away. The hardest part about dealing with avoidant discard is that it's designed to make you question yourself. You'll wonder if you're being too sensitive, if you're imagining things, or if you should be more patient and understanding. But trust your instincts. If you feel like someone is pulling away from you, they probably are. Don't let anyone make you feel like you're asking for too much when you want basic relationship behaviors like emotional presence, future planning, and respectful communication. These aren't unreasonable demands. They're fundamental requirements for any healthy relationship. Finally, remember that being discarded by an avoidant person says nothing about your worth or lovability. It says everything about their limitations and inability to sustain close relationships. You deserve someone who doesn't need to slowly fade away from you to feel comfortable in the relationship. Have you experienced this gradual discard process with an avoidant person? Share in the comments which of these 5 signs you recognize most clearly and what helped you realize what was really happening. If this video helped you understand the difference between normal avoidant behavior and active discarding, like this video and subscribe for more insights about recognizing unhealthy relationship patterns and protecting your emotional well-being. Thanks for watching.